Hello to the world. How do I get? There it is. It's off. All right, guys, we are live across the different social medias. How exciting! Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. I think, for once, the Cape Townian is on time. Can you believe it? But anyways, we'll give some time for people to start joining before we do all the formals. It seems like Catherine.
I think Catherine.
Yeah. So for those of you that have logged in already, I know Renee is out there somewhere supporting us. I think via LinkedIn there. If you're listening, if you're tuned in, please interact with the different wherever you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or if you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, please send us some messages. Let us know that you're there, and we want to make this interactive. So as much as we'll be having a conversation around AI in Africa. We can obviously go in tangents, but please send us messages for those of you that are out there listening already. But we'll give it a couple of minutes and wait for people to log in. But yeah, for us in Cape Town, what a beautiful day. Let's always do the small talk and weather.
Yeah, no, it's a good starting point. The aircon in my office has been off the whole day. It's been like 40 degrees in a hot box.
Yeah. Hey. Catherine's back.
Bobby, if you can hear me, I'm just going to switch networks. Murphy's Law.
Okay, cool. Yeah, got you. No stress. What's up, Dan? Thank you for joining. Yeah, it's fantastic, guys. So coincidentally, and like honestly, I did not realize that the 30th of November was actually ChatGPT's birthday. Put in the date, and then I realized that it's about a year. Do a Google search, 30th of November. So set up this webinar before realizing it was a year to the day that they launched ChatGPT. Hey, how crazy!
Yeah, no, it's mad. It's mad. But I always I love that it's weird that we timed it and it's been out there for a year already. But I guess what people don't see and is they were incorporated, I think 2015, 2016. I think they're a good 7 or 8 years old. It's quite alarming knowing that, for the last 5 years, 6 years, we've all just been completely naive of this beast that has been building, and they built completely in silence. You don't see that often, like startups to that level of stealth. To stay stealth for that long at that level is like a phenomenal feat. And you heard the PR, which is like Elon initially investing, saying, there's a bit of AI, but I don't think any of them actually saw what was coming or could predict the size of what they actually had.
Yeah, no,
I can't imagine the day prior to going live, their team internally thinking we're about to release this to the world.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think so. Being in the tech space, all three of us, and building awesome products for people out there. The mantra is make small, quick iterations and send out, get feedback. And just to your point, that they didn't do that. They literally held back. And Mr. Elon Musk was saying, must be careful of AI, but what are you talking about? No one had seen anything yet, and then boom, 30th of November, 2022, and oh.
We got exposed to Siri, so I think all of us were a bit really AI, is this all it can do? Where we had this very rudimentary.
Apple party, sorry.
I know. Siri or Alexa wasn't bad, but basically she just listened to instructions as opposed to, I don't think we knew at all what was coming. Yeah. And it was actually quite, from a product perspective, I've always been fascinated, or one of the best decisions they ever made, how do you launch this to the public? Mm-hmm. And simply with the simple concept of a chatbot, that blew my mind. Sometimes we overcomplicate all our products and we try and build these features and we try and build this. Text input and response is as simple as they got. Yeah. Fascinating.
100%.
Great. Right, I see that online, Bobby. Murphy's Law. Yes. Here we are. Hi.
We're running. The timing was good, but welcome. I think we're 5 minutes in, and I think we can definitely get started. So for the people that are tuning in, that are live with us right now, thank you for joining. It's really an honor to have you here, and it's an honor to be hosting the first webinar for the Open Letter. And we're going under the name of the Open Conversation, and that's where we'll be doing these live events under the Open Conversation, and you'll be able to find that on our YouTube channel. How would you build it? There will be a playlist for it, and then obviously under the Open Letter newsletter, we'll have it there. And yeah, hopefully we'll have lots more of these events, but I'm really excited to be hosting the first one. Really honored and excited for today's conversation. So just for everyone, it's super casual. I have a feeling that our guests already have a glass of wine hiding off screen, so I might be right, I might be wrong.
Who knows?
Yeah, but you never know what's inside there. I think with Catherine, we can see through. But anyways, grab a drink, and it's going to be a casual conversation, but a very serious topic, which is AI in the African context. And I don't think that this has been spoken about enough. So I'm really excited to get going. So please, if you're out there, send us a message, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. We really want to engage with the audience. So you'll be able to send your questions at any point in time. This is a casual conversation. Imagine the three of us were sitting at the same table as you. So that's the idea. We're going to have the conversation throughout. Going to be quite timeless, and we'll be done at 7 o'clock. So please make sure, don't waste your time. If you have a question, please shout, get it to us, and we can dive into this conversation. Otherwise, it's going to be growing organically. That's enough from me. I have to welcome my great guests. We've had them on the podcast, and great feedback from both of them, and huge AI enthusiasts, as well as in the business of actually building products in AI, using AI. So first and foremost, ladies first, Catherine Rukov, thank you very much for joining, the founder of 2050. Thank you for joining. It's great to have you back. Yeah, fantastic. And then on the other corner, we've got Matt Quarta. I don't know, always, even as Portuguese as I am, Quarta.
Quarta. You do okay, it's Italian.
Oh, is it Italian? Always thought it was Portuguese.
Learn something new every day, Bobby.
There we go. So not quite, it's okay. Yeah. But anyways, Matt is the founder of Hivery, and Matt, I don't know, maybe if you want to just kind of explain what that is, because it's literally based off of AI.
Yeah, there's two parts. There's the strategic consultancy when it focuses on AI and how AI can transform your business. And then there's, of course, the growth side of things, which is one of our first products, which is Webry. And it's basically an AI digital agency, putting growth, imagining what the agency of tomorrow looks like using AI.
Fantastic. See, I like guests that can do elevated pitches. Catherine, do you want to do a quick elevated pitch for 2050?
Sure. I work with smart, interesting people to build cool shit. Am I allowed to swear? So yeah, we build software for enterprises that is cloud-powered and AI-powered, and mostly in the retail, banking, mobile sector. And we just love solving problems. So happens to be that there are some phenomenal tools out there to do that with. So
I love it. Absolutely. And that's why I love having you guys on as the guests, because we're all in the problem solving space, being in product and trying to build products for the masses. And so, yeah, let's dive in. What does it mean for Africa, right? So we're going to touch on ChatGPT, obviously, but I'm just going to read a quote from Andrew Ng. I'm pretty sure I announced that correctly. And he talks about AI in the general industry. So he says, it's difficult to think of a major industry that AI will not transform. This includes healthcare, education, transportation, retail, communications, and agriculture. There are surprisingly clear paths for AI to make a big difference in all of these industries, right? And then you go and start doing a bit of research, and you start realizing that Africa is full of problems. And I say unique because they are kind of isolated in the way that the economics of this continent is. If we look at education, we look at healthcare, the poverty, and crime. I mean, I think we don't talk about that enough. And I'm curious to start talking, diving into how can AI start solving some of these massive, massive problems. So Catherine, to start off, how do we not look at what happened with OpenAI? Was it a week ago where they kicked Sam Altman out? And it was crazy that you couldn't turn on anything without reading about it. Where they changed the CEO 3 times, or whatever it is. Are you planning to throw your hat in there? Get your name in there?
Not as the CEO, potentially as the board. I mean, I think there's definitely a shuffle needed, considering the board currently consists of Silicon Valley bros and some whitebeards, which, from an African perspective concerns me. I think if we're going to be building tools like OpenAI does, then diversity and inclusion is really important. So what your board looks like ultimately represents where your product's heading, as far as I'm concerned. These are the guys that are making decisions through their biases and their lenses. So if I had a choice, would I add myself to the board? Probably not. It seems like a lot of bad press, but I do think that they should consider some alternate faces. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's important, and that's what I love about what the South African government has gotten right. It's about diversity, and I think that at least we have, even on a cabinet level, we do have representation across, which is great. So yeah, I completely agree. Then there's the question around how OpenAI started to where it's been heading, which is going from an open source nonprofit to $80 billion valuated company, and the CEO gets fired or whatever, gets fired, and everyone's wondering what the valuation is and how it's going to make money in Microsoft, etc., etc. What's your view on that?
Look, I think it's really important for policymakers to step in sooner rather than later. We really can't afford to have another Meta or Google or Amazon on our hands. Just the days of the monopolies are over. It's important to note, though, I think, if I have this correct, OpenAI the nonprofit was founded in 2015, and their mission is to build general artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity. And they then also, that's an Inc., and they also started an LP, which is a capped for-profit organization, but it is governed by the nonprofit board, and none of the board members hold any equity. And interestingly enough, Sam Altman doesn't hold any equity in his personal capacity. So, again, structures are set up, they change. One would hope that, like I mentioned at the top, policymakers are going to step in and say, how are these complicated structures managed? Anthropic similarly is a very complicated structure, and one would want more transparency rather than less.
Yeah, I like that. Matt, what was your takeaway from the whole drama that unfolded?
Many thoughts, but pardon, I worry that the media's obsession with OpenAI, when it comes to thinking everything AI is OpenAI, and I think, to add on to Catherine's point, is that the media does what the media sells, or writes what the media sells. So we have an obsession with this company because they're first out the gates. But I actually think that when it comes to AI, we must not forget that there is a lot more companies other than OpenAI. And I think market competition is critical here. And being the first movers at the moment is good for them. But the media, we must not get obsessed with everything as OpenAI and what OpenAI do, and that's our destiny. There's a lot of things, like I'm constantly monitoring a company called Hugging Face, which is definitely more open source. And if you look at the learning of their model when it comes to the trajectory, they probably could actually take over OpenAI in the coming years, because many hands make light work. So I definitely think that the AI space in the next 2 years this is my assumption, is going to look very different to what it is at the moment, being OpenAI is not the only leader. So maybe this is a big thing for us today, and the media is blowing it up like a big thing, but it might not always be the case.
I want to add on to that, if I may, and Matt, you make a very good point. Hugging Face actually just did a tour of South Africa, like a roadshow. They've partnered with AWS. It was really interesting hearing one of their key guys just talk about what's possible and how you can actually access that through their models through Bedrock and PartyRock and so forth on Amazon. But there was a very interesting article on Unheard this week. May have been this week or last week, I'm losing track of time, but really speaks about some of the deeper, more political considerations. So as you all know, the US is locking down, the US company's ability to sell technology into China. And yet, Sam Altman himself has said that, he thinks of his company as borderless. And so considering who's been added to the board, someone that is government from the US side, you're starting to realize that these guys are getting really scared. And so with especially OpenAI not being open source, as is Llama 2, for example, I think they're there's a lot of hype happening with bigger conversations beneath that the media are not necessarily reporting on, because that's just not what sells the news. But I think there are going to be larger economic and political impacts in the future, which we should have a more careful eye on if I was a government.
Yeah, it's interesting, sorry to bring up blockchain in an AI event, but
how dare you? Is that like Web 3.0? Where's that?
But the whole thing there was also, there was all this hype and, what does regulation look like? I mean, I don't know how many years blockchain's been around and we're still trying to figure out the regulation there. So now AI, and I was listening to a really cool talk the other day regarding AI, and the way they said it, which was really cool, AI is helping people make decisions, right? Like it's actually going into that decision space, because, how should I do this? Or, I need help doing this, this, and this. It tells you, oh, you could do it like that. Oh, thank you for that. I think I will do it like that, right? That's kind of the interactions that are happening with ChatGPT. It's kind of helping you make your decisions at a faster rate because you're kind of being guided along the way. And I think maybe that's where I think Elon Musk might have been trying to say, like, that's where the thing is. And that's where regulation is. Like, what if that guiding thing is in the wrong space? And I think that's where I'm curious about where the regulation is going to come in, and how does that affect business? Does it stifle it, or does it just be that guiding hand along the way? I mean, I have no answers to this. I'm just my thoughts. I don't know if you guys want to share any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've got quite a big thought on just the human behavior of how we so easily trust that response. Like, it is disturbing, and how easy, like, humankind, I think we're probably going to learn that, because it's just data. Like, at least when we do a Google search, we've treated to, like, be critically analyze our results, we scroll through it. But whatever comes out of ChatGPT, generally somehow there's this inept trust that we just decide that this is the right answer. And I think probably the human race, or a lot of people, the users, have to learn over the next 6 months is not everything is correct. Because maybe regulation is actually not, we're going to have to make those decisions before regulation actually has a chance.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think one of the things I always think about is the example of the abacus versus the calculator. So the abacus makes you smarter, changes the way you think and how you do math. And you can eventually do it by yourself without really even having an abacus nearby, versus a calculator that, effectively does the job for you. If you go and listen to an interview between Azeem Azhar from Exponential View and the founder of Perplexity AI, fantastic tool for research, by the way, you can also see that a lot of the models, if you think of the Google model, it's really that innovator's dilemma, right? Google wants you to waste time. They want you to click on as many links as you possibly can, because they make money for every link you click on. So they simply can't change their business model. But a tool like Perplexity AI gives you the immediate answer right there and then, cites its sources, and is not necessarily prone to hallucinations because it's not making things up. It's searching the real web. So I wonder more around, how do we build tools that augment what we do, and how do you teach, whether it's at school level or at a business level, how do you teach organizations and teachers to teach what you should be asking and how you should be treating it and thinking critically, right? The same as with fake news and everything else. And that, I think, is probably the biggest risk we have, is that people don't critically think about how they use it. And it's easy to spot when they don't critically think about how to use the responses they're being given. And it's easy to spot.
Yeah. And I think, you're back. And Catherine, on that point, and actually to Matt's point that he also brought up, which is for kids, that are using chat or using their phones, whatever, and there's some sort of embedded AI somewhere in there already. There was an example of, like, is it Alexa, or one of those tools that said, "Hey Johnny, it's time to go to bed now." And the kid was like, "Oh, okay, cool," and went to bed. Whereas the mother was screaming and asking and pleading to go to bed, and all of a sudden, Alexa says go to bed in a different tone, and he listens and he goes to bed. And it's just fascinating, like you say, like somehow we listen to that, whereas we don't critically do the other stuff. It's a fascinating world or direction we're going in. Okay, let's not get too deep, guys. Sorry, Matt.
Can I bring one point back to our Africa topic? So I just want to bring it. I might be jumping in here, but this is a great segue into education in Africa and AI. I think it's a nice narrative. But like everyone looks like, AI might be the new teacher, or, has an opportunity within Africa to do this. And like, because your access to knowledge is much better than ever before because of that event and the access to hopefully a computer. But people must just be wary of this. And like, I'm very wary of it, because education, much like we've spoken here, is like, it's a very transactional relationship that you have, and probably it can get things right, it can get the facts right, but education as a concept, and this is what we mustn't get wrong, and I think it's a step backwards, specifically in Africa, if we just think that this is the solve to African education, because there's IQ, which is like, these are the facts, this is how science works, but then there's also like interpersonal and social skills and all of that. Like, we could have all gone to varsity and read the textbook. And right now you can probably go to varsity and, deal with ChatGPT on your computer. You can get all the knowledge. You can tell it, I can write essays, it can check your work, and it's all great. But there's group work, there's interpersonal work, there's EQ, there's working with other people. And I think this is what like a holistic education system will offer. So yeah, I know that I was jumping ahead, but what I just want to note is everyone's just trying to make these startups, like, when it comes to this, but we must be very wary of how much power and how much we actually expect from it. How much people expect from it. Like, why isn't Africa learning, or why aren't these students learning like they used to? We must, like, we're very quick as a human race to jump to solve all. If it's too good to be true, we need to be more inquisitive about it. So even in the big concept, before we jump on, like, I'd really think that like we must also be wary to not think that AI has come here to solve all our issues, and we can literally throw it at every single problem and it will work. Please be skeptical when throwing it at these things.
Absolutely. So let's start diving into the African concept, right? So it's not difficult to look at education as one of the first use cases, right? And if we look, and guys, I don't know, like, I get a bit nervous now when I do use the likes of Bard and ChatGPT that's using Bing. And I searched by country with the largest unemployment rate, and South Africa's at #1. And I was like, is that really true? I knew we had it bad, but are we really the top? And that, with a bit of searching, turns out we are. Anyways, and I'm happy to be corrected here, but according to the bit of research I did, we're at the top. And it's like, wow, okay. So we've got an unemployment problem. So there was an educate, like, what leads to jobs is education, that you can get skills and bring them into the workplace. So I want to take you to the education before we look at unemployment, but yeah, I'm fascinated to see how we use ChatGPT and stuff. Like, now that it's even got its vocal thing, and this is another point we wanted to talk about, like, you can now talk to ChatGPT on its app and have a conversation and say, oh, but I don't really understand that, I want to move on, right? So, Catherine, just what's your view on how we can utilize AI for learning?
Yeah, sorry, I seem to have a lag again. I think there are many good aspects to it and many bad. So as with any model, right, if you take an international model and you bring it to this continent, it doesn't necessarily work that well. So the three of us are sitting here conversing very, I wouldn't necessarily say all of us eloquent, referring to myself, but we can all converse in English and we can all use these tools that we're talking about. What happens for children in Malawi or Rwanda or Kenya or Egypt who don't necessarily have access to tools that speak in their own language? I think that's where companies like Lalapa AI that are doing Vula Vula are starting to put language models together that essentially help organizations be able to offer these products in local languages. So I mean, over between 1,000 and 2,000 languages in Africa. I've seen some really cool examples of how teachers are starting to incorporate AI. So a friend of mine's daughter was told she has to come up with a board game. And so she essentially could use the tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney to effectively prompt it and say, this is the premise of my game. It has so many characters. I think the characters have these characteristics, et cetera, et cetera. She went through a step-by-step process of building out this game and then using ChatGPT to help her put the prompts together for what these characters could look like in Midjourney, together with their relics and so forth. And she then built out this whole board game, took it with on a camping trip and got everybody at the camping trip to play it, to see where this game comes apart. So it's creativity augmented with ChatGPT, where she wouldn't in the past have been able to create this entire board game with rules, with characters, with character development. Like, that's fascinating, right? So imagine the old schooling system, you've got kids that behind and you've got kids that are far ahead. I think there's certainly opportunities here to help children do adaptive learning, have tutors like Khan Academy is starting to put together that really helps them kind of move forward at the pace that suits them and not being held back by everybody else, or help out with the needs where they have them. Similarly, I think for the teachers, if how to use it, they can be far more creative and they can essentially start putting lesson plans together that speak to everybody in the class, right? And that can be far more engaging and creative. So I think there is an opportunity here to close the gap, granted we apply it properly. And I think a little like mobile helped everybody leapfrog. Access to these tools will help people leapfrog. But again, it will depend on whether it's inclusive or not. And right now, I don't think that's there. So I agree with Matt. It's not a panacea yet.
The thing is, if you can prompt your GPT or whatever it is to kind of, I've tried it. I mean, I've turned a piece of text into Xhosa very easily and quickly. And I was like, wow, okay. And if I put some sort of a automation Zapier in with text and translate that and send it off on a daily basis in South Africa it's 11. Imagine, I think Congo has 1,000 different languages. Imagine you were able to do that for all 1,000 different. I'm fascinated to see where that goes. And do you think that, in South Africa, we don't have Starlink and stuff, access to the internet, which equals access to AI, is that going to hold us back? Or just what's your thoughts around infrastructure to help the education gap, either of you? And just for the audience, please also fill in questions we're waiting from you too. Sorry.
Big question, Bobby. How much time do we have? Matt, go for it.
No, I don't know. It's too big of a question. Like on every pitch deck that I've ever seen, on any startup that I've ever seen, like if there's not a slide or discussion to accessibility, it's not for Africa. It's a great question, and like I think it's just a win. It's not a if, it's rather a win, and that's how I see accessibility. The accessibility is improving, and it definitely is a limitation. It needs to be connected. There's no doubt in my mind that it is, but as the hardware catches up, as the infrastructure catches up, as better tools, it's only a matter of time before that adoption really happens. And they actually go into what's interesting, I think, is it's weird. They might skip a whole era of there might be a whole different era of internet users, because some of us went through the Google search and stuff like that, where these people are going to their first experience. Like I remember back in the day, 5 years ago, it was who owns the gateway to the internet. There was this huge thing with regards to tech. It was a battle between like Meta as well as Google as to where do you land on first. And it's been that race for up until now. And I think now a new entrant or new whole behavior is entering that. And Africa, which is worrying, which I think could be very powerful, is that they might leapfrog that and start experiencing the internet through different means, create a different set of behaviors. And actually, it could be very powerful for a lot of Africa if used correctly. That's my thoughts.
Catherine,
I'm struck with the idea of how we still can't get textbooks distributed to schools, right? I think it's easy to forget that in the bubble we operate in, we have access to all this knowledge and all this information. There are probably billions of people that haven't even heard of generative AI, let alone AI in general. So I'm a little encouraged by things like our Presidential Commission for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I'm encouraged to see countries like Mauritius already having AI charters in place, and countries like Egypt doing the same. Truth be told, I think a lot of our education needs, as has always been the case, is probably going to come from international funding. And the sooner we can get something like that in place, where there is actually a unified approach to how do you help this technology reach people, in the same way that we didn't know that we were using AI when we were using Face Unlock. How do you make it that accessible to everybody else? I just don't think we're there yet. But at least the good side is that AI does have opportunities to fix a whole lot of other problems across the African continent, right? Food security, potentially, urban planning, waste management, and so forth. So hopefully through the permeation of all of that, not just particular sectors, we can hopefully see the adoption and hopefully see some problems solved. It would be great.
Yeah.
We actually have access to gold. So this is great.
Yeah. So something that I also like, going down the education rabbit hole in South Africa, and when you I think it was earlier this year, there was the grade 4 learners in South Africa cannot read for purpose. Or I think I said that correctly. So they don't know what they're reading, meaning. They can't read for meaning. So they're reading, but they don't know what they're reading. And then I'm like, wow, okay. So, but can they talk and understand it? And all of a sudden, that's exactly like Matt. You started off by saying that was the first product that they released, was a conversational thing. All of a sudden, how much does it matter to have that foundation level of reading now if everything is going to become conversational? What are your thoughts on that?
If I can touch on that, I have a friend who's doing her PhD in early childhood development and works with some phenomenal, organizations, global organizations to bring education locally. And I think what we forget, here they are saying, well, we're trying to teach children to read, but they go back home and their parents can't read. And so we know the fact that kids who engage with books more land up, more books they're on the home, the better they do and perform in school in a later age. So I don't have the specific statistics, but there is some. And what is happening is that they're now starting to create content that says to the parent, verbal kind of audio content and video content, even though you can't read, sit with this book with your child and ask the child, where is the ball? Or can you see the bird? And essentially allowing parents to engage with their children. I think that's the level we're going to have to go down to with tools such as these. And we forget books are considered very pricey, scarce commodities. So even though these books are being distributed to schools in rural areas, they're often put on the very, very top shelf of the bookshelf because they're so valuable. And yet they should be at ground level where children can access them. And so I do think that books, the foundation of reading and being able to create prompts and think critically and engage, I don't think reading is ever going to be replaced. We do have to start with the fundamentals. But the fundamentals are still not there. So not sure we're going to solve it today, but I'd love to hear Matt's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I concur. There's always this debate of what's the future of the interface or text-based interface, and moving into these more audio side of things. And I don't think it's binary. I don't think it's either or. I think up until now it's been owned predominantly by these interfaces or the digital interfaces which we interacted with, images as well as text-based, and this other more, I don't know how you can actually contextualize that interface. I don't know if there's a term for it, which is more audio focused, and I don't know, there might be a term, but it's just been lacking till now. I think that much despite we can call each other, despite everything, and I always say this, copywriting and email has stayed the test of time. You can have as many meetings and you can literally do this, but email is there and it is there to stay. Despite jumping on a call is sometimes good, but someone always says, please put that in an email. And I think that's why text or these text interfaces or the role of these interfaces will always be there, because it allows you to consolidate a single thought, allows you to store it. And I think there's so much power in that, as opposed to moving away from that thought completely. And what does this interface of tomorrow look like? I don't think that interface is going anywhere. I don't think it's going to be elevated. And I think there's going to be either or. And as Catherine has said, there's components of each. So text and these interfaces and the role of reading has fallen short in many areas, where maybe interfaces such like this will evolve. So then it's going to be the best of both worlds as opposed to just a single thing. So
I like that.
There's a very cool startup I think they're in Nigeria, called Intron Health, something to that effect. They've trained their models to recognize over 2,000 accents, I think, and it's really about medical transcribing. So it helps doctors to transcribe notes and do so by using voice, but essentially still records that information and helps them then convey that information back to their patients, right? So I think there are all these ways in which, yes, the word will remain there. We still have to have this auditability and traceability. We still have to use it to train models and whatnot. And I don't know, maybe I'm just always going to stand up for the book, because I love the book. But yeah, I don't know.
I'm not looking for
the book. No, I agree. I really want to touch on healthcare, because you touched on it now, and I don't know if we should go down that rabbit hole now, but because I want to actually finish the thoughts from education to the workplace and jobs creations or the destruction of jobs, because that's what everyone also can't help but to think how it's going to take away jobs and stuff. So we come from the product space. We build products for people, and and going to that UI thing that you kept bringing up, Matt, I mean, we are now changing the way we are going to have to build products. So I had this question lined up, but now you've already said how you don't think that interface is going to go away, because we had Siri, it didn't work well, blah, blah, blah. ChatGPT has brought out his, I think about, for example, taking out insurance, right? Now I can say my thing. Here's another, sorry, I'm bouncing, but the thing around the UI, right, of that interface, it took us how many years to learn the computer's language, and we created different versions of it, Java and C# and all of that stuff. All of a sudden, it feels like it's changed the other way around, and now it understands our language better. So we don't have to go and learn their language as much as we needed to, 2 years ago or whatever. So it feels like there's this monumental shift to where we are going to interact with the way technology is built and products are interacted with. So using the Siri example, using the ChatGPT example, Matt, I know you are a big proponent around building products. How do you see, so just building on your already thoughts on that interface change, where it's becoming, for example, that insurance, taking out insurance, and now it's a vocal, I can speak to an AI and prompt, done. How do you see other products also moving in that direction?
It's a great question, and I might simplify this too much, but not to over-architect the solution, is that I think the role of the user just shifts. That's how we approach it from our team and the tech that we're pulling out. So it's like, again, it's not this new way of doing things. It's the role, like we work internally. So I can speak from experience now how that we're treating this as a tool within our product development and with the way that we create content, is that we look at it as a tool. So where say senior designers and senior copywriters or copywriters and designers from our side would actually be writing that thing from the ground up, what we have is the AI doing the harder work and literally doing the ideation and the creation. And then the role of the designer, you still need the designer, you still need the copywriter, you'll still need the engineer. However, each of their roles slightly gets shifted or elevated to be more of an overseer and a manager of this new resource. And that's how, like, I kind of tell agencies or companies that we work with, they're like, how do you treat it? And I'm just like, it's another tool, it's another person in our team. Like, give it a name, sit there, that's what it does. And so at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, in product development and how it's done, is that your product might have AI, you might use AI in doing it, but you still have to do something with an interface to use it. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It just means there's less text, there's less graphics, there's less emphasis on how it looks, but more about how it interacts and how it validates your data that you're giving it. So you gave me a 9-digit ID number, it's supposed to be 10. Where did you go wrong? Instead of seeing this red text telling you that it's 10, that you've done something wrong. So that's where I'm like interested to see how all of a sudden, because also if you speak to my parents specifically, and they tried to do some online banking and they had to phone the call center, they went mad. They're like, can I just get hold of a human? And now we're moving to like this AI. It sounds human, but is it human? So anyways, Catherine, what's your view on this topic?
I think of it as there's an engine, and there used to be people who had to understand the inner workings of that engine, be able to write the code, be able to do the designing themselves. But now there's this conversational layer on top that essentially unlocks that engine and puts it in the hands of anybody who can speak or type, for that matter. There's a lot of debate in the world we operate in, like, will AI take over developer jobs, for example, or UX jobs, etc. I certainly don't think so. I think Stack Overflow has taken a bit of a hit since Copilot and others have come out. At the end of the day, what we're seeing and what we love is that we're far more productive. So the repetitive jobs can be automated, and it allows all of our engineers to actually become solution architects. They can think more critically, they can be more creative, they can really think about how do you solve this problem end to end. There's a lot more interaction between them and the service designers. Who are we solving this for? What are the problems we're solving? So many tools, if you think of MIT Ideator, that just allow that process to really kind of spark. It's fascinating. And I think the tools at our disposal now that businesses can use, and it's really about that wonderful tweet that came out. It's like, AI is not going to take your job. It's the person using AI that's going to take your job, right? So how are you using these tools to great effect? And similarly, kind of adjacent to that, you've got to make sure that you don't have a team that suddenly lands up going, well, what? I'm out of a job. It is your job to think forward and understand how you can upskill people and reassign them. And jobs will be lost, of course, but as every revolution has shown us from the Industrial Revolution, jobs are always recreated and more jobs come out of it. I think we just have to be open to letting go of the fear and figure out how we creatively respond to that fear.
So what should South Africa, oh, sorry, Matt, you want to
go. No, I just wanted to add to that, like, completely agree with Catherine, and just another use case, and I love that jobs are lost, but then jobs are created. A great example even from our side is we needed to build a WordPress plugin, which we would definitely outsource to another team, and we're not developers. But actually, with ChatGPT, we were able to build a WordPress plugin for our clients, where they save them time, save them money, and basically that's. So I would say, as a business owner at the moment, if you were to look at AI, like, you are foolish not to look at this, because what I've done here, and I hope they're not watching our partner, is that literally we've just taken their business where we would refer it to their partner to build a plugin. We built the plugin, even though we're very dev light.
Yeah, I love that. We can't edit it. This is live. This is all up on the This is not a podcast, guys. Careful.
What is still really, really important, and not to take away from the work you guys have done in any way, shape, or form, but I think what we have to remember is that there's this risk in juniors, people with less experience, not junior in age, people with less experience, who don't necessarily know how to, let's use code as an example, go back and critically analyze if that code is actually good code or bad code. You know, it can write this wonderful code snippet and say, here you go, I've solved your problem for you. And yet when it kind of comes down to the wire, it could break everything. And I think that's really important. Okay to use it for repetitive tasks, but I think every company, whether you're a software development company or a legal entity or an enterprise, I think there should be really clear guidelines around how AI is used and when it gets reported that it's being used, and what tools are accepted and not accepted, and what governance do we go for. Again, this really boils down to education on so many layers, right? Because the junior might sit there and be like, yep, did that in 5 minutes, and we'll spend the next 55 drinking. Unless you're actually giving that person something more creative to do in those 55 minutes, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to start losing money. So.
Yeah. I'm curious to see, and especially in a South African context, I don't know what the rest of Africa's legislature is around firing people, but in South Africa it's incredibly hard, so I'm wondering, how can AI help employees or employers upskill their staff using AI, right? So we see these gaps. How can AI help you get you to the level where we need to be? I'm not going to fire you, I cannot fire you, but I can it's easier to empower you. So how can I do that? How can I use the tools? It's less to do. I'm curious to see if that plays a part as well. I don't know if you have thoughts on that. How can we use AI to help already existing staff in a South African context?
Are you asking Matt or me? Go for it, Matt.
It doesn't matter. Anyone.
Take it.
Oh, okay. So, Bobby, I think it really starts with understanding what are the jobs to be done within your organization. There are just the proliferation of amazing courses out there. You can take one of Andrew's courses. I'm not going to pronounce his last name, but it's spelled NG. They did a great job. And, within 6 hours, you can have the basic principles of AI down. You can spend the next 18 hours learning LangChain and have yet another skill under your belt. And I think it's really about understanding which skills your team should be learning, because not all skills are applicable to everyone. I think it's also about really asking your team what is it that they want to learn, and addressing the fears of what this is for your job moving forward. We sometimes forget to just go back to the human side of it and say, this is what's happening. What don't you understand? What would you like to know more of? And what are your ideas for how we can use this in our business? I think you're probably going to find that you have so many amazing creative ways. And just in the same way when social media came out and suddenly we had social media job roles, like people literally, it was their job to sit there and write tweets and Facebook posts. And they've started also kicking off this whole creative content space and content as a product. So I think that if we allow people and all the voices in the room to contribute, you may actually find that you're going to figure out some things that help your business. Definitely help your business.
Get some prompt engineers. That's now the new role that's been opening up. I think we can try and understand what that is, but that's a new role, right, Catherine?
It is, although if you listen to the chap whose name I now forgive me, but from Hugging Face 2 weeks ago, he presented a Capitec in Techno Park, and he's like, what is this prompt engineer thing? Anyone can be a prompt engineer, just learn some LangChain. So I don't know. I think the prompt engineer has come and left as quickly as it could possibly done. But yeah, I do actually.
Okay.
It's like saying you should be really good at Google searches. Really?
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But I agree with Catherine on this. It's knowledge has always been there. Knowledge has always been available to organizations. Like one of the first companies, I had a beautiful subscription to this company called lynda.com, which is like literally great tutorials, great everything. And their adoption, I remember the HR person, their adoption was just like abysmal. They question it at the end of every their financial year. It's just like, why is no one using this? We're trying to get our people smarter. And the truth is, well, it also is true for the rest of the internet. You can find knowledge anywhere, but your internal workforce, it's their desire and their motivation to do it is the biggest thing here. So again, as Catherine said, like we must never discount the human element to it. But what I do think AI can help, and I think people should look, is altering that that learning environment, that learning experience. Because like I can go to Duolingo, for an example, and like they've gamified it phenomenally, they make you feel guilty and so on. But if I go to a country such as Italy and I start speaking English with someone, I will learn 10 times faster than any app could ever do. So I think it's elevating the learning experience through AI to make it more conversational, to make it more two-way, to make it, as Catherine said, more inclusive. I mean, if you can alter that and make it more enjoyable, inclusive group, and actually I think AI people will be more willing to learn, because it's not just me reading a textbook answering something at the end, which I think is a fantastic territory for any like a tool that you would want to upskill your workforce with.
Yeah. Like that.
It's one final thought, if I may. If you look at the legal profession, you could use AI for so many things: transcribing, discovery, creating documents and boilerplates and so forth. But I still want a lawyer arguing my case in front of a judge. We're just not there yet. Like the rumors for Q+, which is apparently OpenAI's version of general AI, it's only now starting to do basic math problems. So I think, again, it's about separating the hype from what is actually tangible. And the truth is, I think a lot of people are scared because they just don't know. Similarly, I'm not into Boston Robotics robots giving me a massage. Perfectly happy with that. So I think we should just get real sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a terrible
So
thing.
to bring it back to the African sort of centric view here, like, so what I'm thinking, and I'm picking on Matt because I worked with them and we were all about, building lean products. All of a sudden, AI makes it a lot easier to build stuff. So just think about all those potential products or businesses that could have been created, but it didn't get the chance to because it was too expensive, too difficult. I mean, we all know how difficult it is to launch a technology product in South Africa because it's expensive to maintain, to grow, to build, and do all the other stuff. How can we see that change happening? How much easier could it become that we could see more products being given and creating, like in the township economy, to help them grow and help grow the economy, from that way? Because it's a lot easier now, right? Matt, yeah.
And I love that narrative, and we preach that to our clients. And I always my analogy is like David versus Goliath. However, now you've given David a really solid weapon to fight Goliath, which excites me so much. It's like this. Back in the day, you had to know a dev house, have some funding, and build something, but now not anymore. So it becomes an ideas race. It becomes a product market fit race. It becomes which is fantastic, because like the competition that'll enter the market then, and the disruption that'll enter the market is just like, it's fascinating, and it's exciting. I think we're entering to this like really new era, and we're going to see over the next 5 years, and as we're already seeing at the moment, so many new companies enter the fray. It excites me a lot, because then it also even elevates. So to to make AI is great because it's great in executing, but it also elevates the point of the human, the point of the idea, and the point of the founding team and their role. Great ideas will win again. We might live in this place where for the next 5 or 10 years, great ideas will win, where I think actually we've come from the last 20 or 30 years where great ideas lose and big money wins.
Yeah, I love that.
I agree with Matt. I want to maybe build on that. I think David now has a Knightscope. If you think about just whether this is in the creative industry, 10, 15 years ago, I was working with a company called Boza, and we were dealing with musicians and filmmakers and poets who were putting up green sheets in their, informal housing so that they could create green screens. Now they've got access to things like Midjourney, and they can produce their own music, and there's just so much more you can do. And to Matt's point, I think the one thing we're going to start seeing is that we can start solving problems for a whole new demographic of people, because suddenly the people who understand the needs of those audiences are going to have the tools to be able to build. It's democratizing access to that. Granted, the education portion is sorted, but I'm really excited to see actual problems being solved, because we don't all need another delivery company in the sectors that I live in, but we certainly need ways of doing delivery into township and informal settlements that more secure, more safe, etc. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's amazing stuff. I'm so excited, actually, as you can tell.
Yeah. No, I also get really excited that I think, if we can start empowering people to start being entrepreneurs, the question then is, what do we have to do? So this is one of my fears, right? And they talk about the K economy, right? So you get people that are just on this trajectory of understanding blockchain, and then AI, and then generative AI or whatever. And then what about the people that just aren't aware, or they've heard of it, but they don't use it, they don't think about it, they don't do anything about it, they're not curious enough to go and do about it. They find themselves going, I'm trying to understand, what do we do with these people to lift them and say, but look what it can do, look how it can uplift you, and here's the place where you can go learn about it, and here's a place where you can get supported to create businesses within your ecosystems or your environment, your communities.
Bobby, I guess none of them are on this call. They probably happily report somewhere.
That's fair enough. But what do we do? How do we spread the word? How do we get them involved? Because it opens up so many. If we're so excited, how do we open those doors?
I have two thoughts on that. I think certain people, this might be a little controversial, so I'll put it out there in the last 5 minutes of this talk. And that is that I don't think everybody wants to learn. The truth is, there are many people who survive without internet. There are many people who survive in the pockets in which they live where, my parents still don't use online delivery. They're perfectly happy to go to the store. And so I think we have to remember that not all solutions work for everybody. I think what we should, and back to that I mentioned earlier, I think the way in which we improve people's lives is to use tools like this for urban planning, for energy management, for waste consumption, etc. Like, how do we fix healthcare problems? Because at the end of the day, it is not up to the individual to change their lives if they don't want to or don't want to, is their choice. But it's how our governments and enterprises and countries using these tools to effectively make lives better for people. How do we help everybody rise on that tide? And that for me is you can lead a horse to water, you cannot make it drink, but you should at least bring it to the water and see what happens.
I have a very similar thought to Catherine. Probably one of the best things I learned in my varsity days back in the day, which is the adoption curve. I don't know which theorist did the adoption curve. I put it up so much. And I don't think we should obsess about the adoption, because it's going to follow the traditional trajectory that most technology has adopted. So right now, and I do this dipstick research on a weekly basis, and I ask the person on the street, have you heard of AI? And people say no. And that just shows me that on the adoption curve, you're in your very early, your early adopters. So your first stage were the early adopters, and it's only a matter of time. And the question is not will it follow the model, it's rather how fast it'll go through that. So like we're in the early, where are we? So then you go to the early majority, which are then, and then you've got your majority, which is your major people, and then you've got your laggards, which only after we've all adopted this over the next 5 years, your parents might find, much like Facebook. Facebook followed this perfectly. And now your mom's on Facebook, and that's when Facebook dies. So when it's finished, the adoption curve. And I think
hi, Mom.
we're
Sorry.
So that's it, and I think we are very early on in that.
Elon Musk
And,
takes over.
Yes,
Sorry, we had a
that's
lag
true. And your
there,
mom,
Matt. Elon Musk
mom
takes over
restarted.
Twitter, and all of us, because we're just not there for
No.
that show.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation all on its own. We are running out of time, and it's amazing how quickly these things go when we do them. But we haven't touched on health there, Catherine. I know you've brought it up a few times. I would like to just kind of get your view. You clearly, you're referencing it a lot. What is your view, and how can AI help Africa in the healthcare industry?
Oh, so many ways. Rwanda is delivering medicine in areas with drones, areas that are hard to reach. In Kenya, I forget these names now, but in Kenya, there's a tool, I think it's Kudu or something, I need to look it up, that effectively helps people analyze, like they can speak to a doctor, they can also add their symptoms, they can order medicine. I think there are just so many ways in which that becomes accessible. But then if we move away from the Gen AI side, a couple of years ago, we were involved in an investigation where a particular medical group had over 4 petabytes of data on just labeled data for skin lesions, but for African skin tones. So the idea was to build a model to look at how do you reach a differential diagnosis earlier so that a doctor can effectively say, yes, this may or may not be cancer, but with the help of AI. And so you can start treating symptoms using kind of really deep neural networks to figure out whether people, need access to healthcare sooner. So I think there's some really interesting spaces there, and more just what I'm excited about is accessibility to healthcare, which is starting to open up, and the provisioning of healthcare areas where you can now start figuring out the prediction of trends. Will there be a cholera outbreak somewhere? Should we be deploying more medical staff into that region and so forth? So I'm the product of a doctor and a pharmacist, so healthcare sits quite close to my heart.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I love that. The prediction, the thing we haven't actually touched on that is like, how can we predict? I wanted to talk about crime and safety because I was wondering if there was a way that, AI could help us predict when things are about to turn in a certain way. I don't know if we can, but I mean, Minority Report, there was a whole movie about it.
So, sorry, Matt, I don't mean to hog. There is a tool out of the US. It's a justice tech tool, and they have trained a model to recognize gunshots. So they work with the police departments where it's starting to pick up on sound, and the moment that it hears that there are more gunshots, it alerts the police. Imagine using technology like that on the Cape Flats, right? The police are there by the time the shots start going off. And, so this does kind of speak to civil rights and privacy and a whole lot of other things, but there are tools like these being built. And actually, I think there are over 14 countries across Africa that's starting to use AI in defense and security. Whether that's for anti-terrorist attacks or, deploying drones to go and, clear up unrest. There's a lot happening out there that's, more than just what we've been chatting about. Like, can we make a cool movie with AI? So,
yeah. Matt, I saw you
No. There was just that something similar actually off the topic of AI, which is what Catherine mentioned, and I was Kruger a while back. And this is technology that Kruger's actually implemented. So if you really post-close for poaching, which is on some of the trees, there are these sensors around Kruger, and actually with GPS coordinates and trajectory mapping, they can actually exactly pinpoint where that is, and then the drones go up. And the poaching in Kruger of rhinos, since that technology has been implemented, has dropped 80%. It's insane the way that impacts poaching.
We've had a comment on LinkedIn from Priyash, who was on our podcast a while ago, who's literally doing that work. Priyash, if you're there, a shout out. You can give us a little thumbs up if you're still there. But he commented, and he's literally working on that, Matt. So you should look out for him. He's literally working on
fantastic piece of tech.
Yeah. So I want to sort of closing off. I mean, wow. What I love about my job is that I get to sit with these amazing guests and learn from them. And that's not just me saying that. I really do believe that, and I feel very lucky to say that or to have this opportunity. But to finish off, there he is. We're actually still there. Nice. Matt's going to reach out.
Good piece of tech.
But yeah, so Catherine, if you had one sort of area that's not healthcare, if you had one area that you would like to dive into to help Africa using AI, what would it be? Like, what business would you start? What kind of problem would you solve with it?
I want to solve all of them: mining, healthcare, education. I'm very passionate about climate change. I know that sounds like an old trope, but I think urban planning is really, really important, because urban planning and good urban planning allows access to all of right education, healthcare, and so forth. So I think urban planning would probably be top priority for me. If I was building something for myself, it would definitely be a clone, because I need to go on holiday. But that would be about it.
I want one too, please.
Maybe
That's
before I take them out.
Love it. And Matt, same question?
So very interesting answer, something we haven't touched on, and I think also an assumption, a huge assumption of mine, is Elon Musk's company Neuralink. I would literally be building a competitor to that as soon as possible. They just did a huge funding round a couple of weeks ago, and it's the media has completely not noticed this, because on the precipice with the idea that humans, I would love to solve an industry or a certain thing within Africa, but my fundamental belief is humans solve human problems, be it a township, be it in Africa, and I would love to play on that human level. And that's why I think Neuralink is so powerful. We've been thinking 20 years in the future now, all these lovely things on AI, now try and put that in someone's brain. Try and put that level of data and that synergy. And yes, it's scary. We're in like Terminator 2 level over here, which I think is going to be a future. But by elevating people, you then elevate their ability to solve problems. And that to me is the most important thing we could ever do. So I still am very human first, and I think I always will be. But Neuralink, watch Neuralink.
Cool.
Catherine, I can't not let you. There was definitely I have to. What was that thought?
I'm a big proponent for collective intelligence, right? Human and machines working together. Not sure if anyone watched the news in the last 24 hours with pertaining to Elon. I think things are coming to an abrupt halt very soon. I think we're watching a meltdown in real time. And I worry about when we start fiddling with humans, genetically modifying things. We've seen the risks with CRISPR. We've also seen the benefits of that. But I think that divide in terms of who will and who won't have access is something that concerns me. I don't know how that could be solved at a human first level. So I think it's interesting. Are they putting anything in my brain? I don't think anyone's going to decipher what's up there.
But you do want to clone.
Yeah, I do want to clone, although it will be the nicer version of me. Maybe that's where my brain went. Probably. But Matt, I'm all for it. I'll support you.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll end it off there. But yeah, thank you very, very much for joining. For all our guests, all our people that are watching, our audience, and for anyone that watches this later, thank you for tuning in. This was a real honor, and I'm very glad and happy to have had Matt and Catherine. Guys, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
No, thank you, Bobby.
Thanks for having
that was great.
us.
Thank you, Catherine. Interesting conversation.
Thanks,
Let's
Matt.
do it again.
Likewise. Wine next
Cheers,
time.
everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Cool.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.